we haven't had a full week like you mentioned, but I feel like, we've got some structured times now for when we eat and lift and have practice and video sessions. So there's a little bit of a routine for the coaches and players, and that's what we're used to for the most part. But at the same time, with this basketball season approaching, there's going to be nothing routine about it. So you'll have to adjust on the fly. But the kids, like I've been saying throughout this whole process, have shown a ton of character and resiliency, and they've adjusted well. And I feel like the coaches are too. So, we're looking forward to another week in it.
All right, we'll open it up for media questions. Just to kind of start off with, identify yourself and just your outlet, please, before asking the question.
Andy Morgan, KTSM 9 News. Coach, how you talk about getting into a routine, I guess this week is another start of maybe a new routine, with it being kind of a game week. I guess how close, with the limited practice time that you guys have had, are you guys to being game ready, and what do you expect from Arizona Christian on Friday?
I don't know really what to expect from them. I haven't gotten to the point where I've opened my laptop and watched them personally. Certainly, Coach Barker, who was assigned that particular game, has already got his film study going. And, the advantage they're going to have are the obvious. They've been practicing a lot longer than us. They've played a bunch of games. They played real games. So they're going to have great experience. And it's a good program. They've been winning at a high level, especially recently. It's a Division I game in their gym. I don't know the numbers, but how many Division I teams across the country are going to play in a venue on the road at a home environment where it's not a Division I gym or a Division I opponent? So it's unique that way. But I think we're all looking forward to it. I have no idea, how we'll play. We need a great week of practice. We brought in officials on Saturday, even though we weren't quite ready for that, but we felt like we needed to simulate a game day as best we could, given the circumstances. So we had game day. So we got up, had our shoot around, went and had some video just of ourselves, obviously, had our pregame meal, gave them a lot of time they normally would after something like that, brought them back, went through our warm-ups, what we would do on game day, and try to simulate as best we could what it's going to feel like on game day, because of obviously no scrimmages, exhibitions, and all the other circumstances that you bring with it. So I think that was really good for them, not to have a bunch of questions come this Friday when we actually have to go through a very similar type of protocol for playing a game. But in terms of the quality of play, we need a good week of practice. We'll see, when we roll it out on Friday, what it'll look like.
Hi, Coach. My name's Allie Vettner. I'm a reporter with KTAR News in Phoenix. I'm doing some research and some studying about your team being relocated here. And here, obviously, I know your state has some current restrictions, and right now our state does not have those, but we are facing a major outbreak. What has been the, I guess you could say, the culture or the language with your players about how to protect themselves, although there aren't restrictions like there are in your home state?
Yeah, we talk daily. We've been talking daily for quite some time, even before we got to Phoenix, going through our relocation and the transition, that you basically have to act as if everybody has it. And that's kind of our mentality is we wear masks when we're not just within ourselves now, when we're in public, when we're walking from even anywhere in our bubble here at the Arizona Grand. We're wearing masks, and certainly you'll walk by people that some wear, some don't. And so we're doing everything that we can to protect ourselves and keep us clean that way. And but we were doing it before we got here. I don't know how much you know about the backstory, but we were already bubbled on our own campus. We moved all of our players that lived off campus onto some on-campus housing, and they had to basically adhere to some very strict restrictions that we placed upon them, even before any New Mexico shutdown, and even more restrictions than our state had mandated or had guidelines set in place for the normal citizen of the state. We were doing above and beyond what the normal person was doing, just to try to ensure that, again, we stay safe and keep safety and healthy at a priority for us and for our community and our campus. So, doing that is not foreign to us, but, we just try to stay bubbled up, if you will, to the best of our ability.
Hey, Chris, you kind of alluded to this I asked you about it last week, and you answered it that this is just such a unique year scheduling wise. I'm curious if you have one person assigned to Twitter to see who's canceling today, who's canceling, these upcoming games. ASU obviously had a situation come up just last night when Baylor had Coach Drew test positive. So I'm curious if you have somebody that kind of monitors that to specifically then try and maybe pounce on an opportunity that you guys may not otherwise have, scheduling wise.
Coach Miller has spearheaded our scheduling at this point, but it's a group effort. We all have obviously social media accounts, et cetera. But more importantly, a lot of times we're going to hear about that before it even gets to the media, that it's about to happen. And so we make the appropriate calls to various programs and contact folks within that program to try to see what they're thinking, if they have any available dates that would work for us. So it's a constant jigsaw puzzle, and the pieces of the puzzle, change form a lot, so it's a very difficult puzzle, more than most years. But, Coach Miller spearheads it, but we all have, a part in it and try to bring things to the table. And it's not a daily meeting. It's ongoing, it's ongoing, it's hourly. And, sometimes I feel like a kid at a candy store every time I see him going, anything new? You got any calls? And, what's on the table? Will you have any options? And it's kind of exciting to think about, it's game week all across the country, and we're going to have some games that we obviously haven't scheduled right now. And who knows who they'll be against or where, for that matter. So, you got to have that attitude, in my opinion, or it'll drive you crazy. You just got to know that it's going to be an upside down, uneven season. It's going to be a lot of twists and turns. And if you're not looking at it with an upbeat personality or upbeat approach, it's going to drive you into the ground. I mean, it's an emotional roller coaster for all of us. So I'm looking at it as a challenge, and I'm curious to see what becomes available. We're still working a bunch of different angles. And, what happens a lot is, like, we'll work with programs to say, hey, reality it is, by December 12th or 15th, we're going to have someone get COVID on our schedule, and we want to keep that date open. If it happens, we're ready. And that may happen here shortly. We've got a program that we've been working with that has told us that they were full, but one of their teams they think is going to have to be shut down. And so we might jump in and fill a role that way. So I think there's going to be a lot of behind the scenes conversations. Certainly seeing things on Twitter, makes you get on the phone and call around to see how people are adapting to missing games because of COVID, and we're no different.
I guess just one quick follow-up to that is what I know you guys have, as much as anybody anyway, pretty much the anybody, anytime, anywhere kind of mentalities in normal years. But what would specifically be your restrictions on who you could play? I know you're not going to be able to hop on a plane and go out to like Connecticut, on a moment's notice, that kind of stuff. So what would be the only limitations that you guys have for those short notice games this year?
To my knowledge, we really don't. I mean, I don't think it's realistic to think that we're not going to have to get on a plane in the fall. Obviously we're going to have to do it in the spring, for WAC games. We certainly don't want to do it, a bunch of times. We're going to try to limit those type of situations as best we can. But I just don't think it's realistic to think that we're not going to have to jump on a plane. And, I have flown, and, it's pretty darn safe in my opinion. The airlines have done a good job to ensure that. We'd have to be very strategic with our seating assignments and where we would put kids, and have to work with an airline, in my opinion, when it comes to something like that. But, we'll deal with it when it happens, but we don't have any restrictions that would disallow us to fly somewhere to play. It's not ideal. We'd love to be able to stay on the ground and keep our bubble in the bus, in the hotel, if you will. But if opportunity presents itself that it's a good situation, I don't think we're going to turn it down because we have to fly.
Chris,
Where
you
are you
talked
guys
about
in terms
keep
of scheduling?
the rivalry games intact, and New Mexico's talked about maybe they don't play any non-conference games. I don't know where you are with the minors. Have you had any conversations in regard to the rivalry games with the Miners and Lobos?
It's ongoing, with the Lobos, they, and this isn't a negative statement, but they lagged behind maybe a little bit in terms of making decisions on how they were going to react to the restrictions in our state. I know they're out in Levelland now, and we've got constant communication with both staffs, but, they're working through their Mountain West scheduling. They had some pauses. So they've got to get that figured out first, but they've given us no indication, that if they play non-league games that, we're not going to be a part of their schedule. So it's just ongoing. It's a daily back and forth. In terms of the Miners, they certainly, haven't had to relocate. I know they're coming to Arizona twice, at least from their schedule. They've got Arizona State and Grand Canyon on their schedule. And it's easy for me to say, hey, we'll play when you're down here. But, they've got to worry about their schedule and who they play next and how much time they have between games. And I understand how all that works. But I can promise you from our end, we're doing everything and anything to play those games. We are gonna, that's the number one priority for us. If you look across the country, you see more regional games this year than any year in college basketball, regardless of levels and affiliation with leagues, power conferences or not. People are just saying, hey, it makes more sense to get on a bus and drive an hour rather than flying across the country and playing someone because, maybe I don't want to play them because they're lower level than us and it would hurt our fan base, et cetera, if we lost to that team. But because of COVID, you're just seeing a lot more teams pair up within proximity to one another. And obviously, we're in a situation where we live, we don't have a lot of choices. So if there's ever a year where we should be playing, our rivalry games, this would be the year for obvious reasons, but there's a lot of factors and I understand that. But all I can say is from my perspective, and it hasn't changed from day one, they're important to us. They're important to this region. I think they're important to people that follow college basketball, and we've got to make it happen. And we're willing to do whatever we got to do, wherever we got to go to make it work for everybody else. And hopefully, those folks are going to have that same attitude.
Any other questions for Coach?
Coach, what's been your biggest takeaway so far, I guess, within, practicing the last, what has it been? It feels like forever, but probably only like the last 2 weeks. What's been kind of your biggest takeaway and kind of the team that you have there in Phoenix getting ready to, tip off the season?
Yeah, we get a basketball question, right, Jeff? We got a basketball question. Those are more fun to answer. Well, we haven't practiced for 2 weeks straight. We've only been down here since last Tuesday, and we had the snag when we got here where we didn't get to fully go the first day because the floor wasn't quite ready. So we haven't had that many full practices, but we had some obviously prior to that, earlier. And so we had a feel then. And our biggest issue is probably our depth. We've just got some depth issues that we're working through. And I think we're going to have to juggle people around and place guys that would normally not play, that a particular position just because of our depth. We just don't have a ton right now. We're not going to have a ton until the second semester, till WAC play begins. And we're going to have to be creative and trying to figure out how to get our best players on the floor for a longer period of time, where in years past, that wasn't as much of an issue. It's something that we've had a lot of pride in around here with our depth, but it just is what it is at this particular point. So I think our starting five, again, I'm not going to unveil it, but it's been pretty set for a while, which is not the norm for me at all. But there's some distinct separation at most of the spots up and down the roster. So we've just got to get some of our new players adjusted quicker, and it's hard. The reality of it is it's really hard. It's harder for them in every year, but now you add all the other circumstances piling on. It's even harder to get them up to speed and try to get them to understand how to compete at this level and the expectations that we have for them. But the returnees have been great. That they get it. and they're doing a good job of trying to pull people along to get them, to the other side, if you will. But that's our biggest issue. But their attitudes have been awesome. I mean, our energy and our talk has been really, really good. We've seen some signs of leadership from guys that have been around, which is exciting for the old coach. So, hopefully, like I said earlier, it's just, I'm excited about today to get to practice here in a couple hours. And, we had a day off yesterday. We didn't do anything team oriented. They watched some video with the assistants one-on-one. I gave them a day away from me, and which I think is good at times. And, we went back to the normal routine this morning, and we're obviously in the middle of the day, but we'll see how they go today.
I know in years past, your guys' team has been predicated on depth. How is the depth, I guess, looking this year, in a year where it seems like depth is going to be a pretty important factor?
Yeah, that's what I just said. I mean, that's our biggest issue, is our lack of depth. We don't have as much depth as we've had in the past, and it's not going to change in the near future. So we've got to juggle our lineup. We're going to have to play some forwards at some guard spots to just get our best players on the floor more. So like you said, depth is probably a premium this year. It's a bad year not to be as deep as we've been in the past, but we're going to have to adapt and figure it out. Steve, you had a question?
Jack Nixon. How's Tillman working out?
Excuse me?
It's Jack Nixon, coach. How's Donnie Tillman working out?
Donnie's doing well. He's experienced. I'm a big fan of the phrase, you can't teach experience, both in basketball and life. You just can't. And he's got it. He's played 3 years of Division I basketball at 2 different programs in 2 different conferences, and he's had some success at both of them. And so walking in the door, he's got that in his back pocket, and that's helped the transition. And he's my kind of player. Like, he's my kind of dude. He's rough and tumble, and he's in multiple positions. He's got a little grittiness to him, and he's a mismatch issue at times, depending on who they have on the floor. He can score inside and out, and he's got a big, strong body, and he's very coachable. I love every coach in America likes that, but I like where he's at. And his biggest issue for me right now is in practice, like, he'll make a explosive play, and then I won't feel him for 4 or 5 possessions. And I've been talking to him about that and not getting lost in the shuffle, and, making his presence known every time down the court, and not, lurking in the shadows, if you will. So hopefully we can get him to be a little more aggressive, back-to-back possessions, et cetera.
Jack asked the Tillman question. I did want to ask about that. I'm glad, because I got to watch him last year, and the talent, certainly is undeniable. And it just didn't quite work out, but it wasn't for any lack of talent. So I'm glad to hear that it sounds like he's doing pretty well. I'm curious in his situation, but also the whole roster. When you have a scrimmage like you did the other day, are you seeing guys trying to press to sort of make up for lost time in any way, or make up for what was such a weird off season? Or in his case, like, he probably feels he has a little something to prove maybe. Or did you feel that anybody was pressing more than they really should be in that scrimmage because of all those factors?
Yeah, that's a good question. And like I said earlier, it was nice to see more of a game-like situation. It certainly, wasn't the same as game day, but the bounce in their step was a little bit different. The routine, was a little foreign to the new guys. And there was an excitement when I walked into the gym when they were warming up. So I like that, because I could see, like you said, who's going to try to play different on game day. Who is going to try to force the issue and say, hey, I'm one of these guys that shows up on game day, which I'm not a big fan of. I'd rather have the grinders, the everyday guys, what you play like you practice. But reality of it is, some guys do play a little better, a little harder, but some guys do force the issue. And I'm not going to get into the specifics of who, but we had some guys that did that. And so that's why that was so good, is we're going to correct it, today and tomorrow. So it doesn't happen on Friday or the next game that, we don't need you to be hero ball on game day. We need you to do what you do in practice and keep getting better and bring what practice. And we had a little bit of that, not from Donnie, because, again, can't teach experience, and he's been down the road before. But we did have some guys that you know, playing a little too fast, and we're trying to do some things that they didn't necessarily show us in practice.
Coach, got to ask about the local guy, Johnny McCann. It seems like he gets better every year. How's he looking, and how much are you expecting out of him this year?
I'm expecting a lot. I'm expecting for him to have his best year he's ever had. He has to. He's going to be relied on to be one of our go-to guys, one of our best players, if not the best. That's my expectations for him. That's been my expectations for him for quite some time. His biggest issue is, you know, he's always has nagging injuries. You know, he's had an injury-prone career. Some you guys know about, you know, that are long-term, some that you don't, but have derailed his ability to just get better every day. So he's still fighting through some stuff. You know, he practices for the most part, but maybe not the whole practice certain days because something will flare up. It's unfortunate because it stunted his progress. So, you know, he's not in as good a shape as he needs to be. You know, he's just not in as good a shape as he needs to be. But, I mean, he's just a unique player. His feel is just off the charts. His IQ, his feel. And we've got to figure out ways to use him better this year. We've got to be a little more creative and get him in spots with the ball and kind of play through him if we can figure all that out, because he's such a good decision maker with the ball. I mean, that's one of his, in my opinion, underrated parts of his game is his ability to see the court and to make decisions with the basketball in his hands with his size. You know, I'm not saying he's going to play that point forward, but he's a good decision maker, and we'd like to play through him a little bit more if we could. But he just got to stay healthy, knock on wood, and string a bunch of practices together so he can get back into really, really good shape.
Coach, obviously you guys brought in a really good transfer class, but another guy set to make his debut is Wilfred Lakai. Just what have you seen out of him coming off of that season-ending injury from last year?
He was very long. He's which you can't teach. He's just all arms and legs, which is obviously, you know, advantage for a basketball player. But unfortunately, he's not strong for his position. You know, his frame's not a strong frame. He's got to eat weights and just eat as many calories as he can and try to continue to put weight on his frame, which will really help him. But that's his biggest issue. It's just his strength. And when he plays around the paint, people knock him off his spot, and he can't hold his spot quite as well. If there's traffic and he hasn't done a good job of checking his man out, then he can get out physical that time. But his skill set is getting better. You know, he can shoot the ball from the perimeter. He's got to be more consistent. He's got to learn to use his length both in the perimeter and around the baskets, because he can't rely on, you know, out jumping people or out physicaling people. But he's going to have to help us. You know, we need him to play minutes. We need him to be in the rotation. But, you know, he's got no Division I experience under his belt. So hopefully this game Friday will help him.
All right, if that's it for the questions for Coach. I just kind of had one more question for Coach Jens. Obviously, yesterday, you know, Aggie Athletics, in conjunction with Caring Cent, launched the Donate for State program, just to kind of help defray the costs for this program, as well as the Aggie women's basketball program for having to move their team out of state. In just over 24 hours, this program raised just under $11,000 to kind of help do that. Just kind of talk about what that means and just that outpouring of initial support here that you've seen. What does that mean to you in the program?
Obviously, you know, not surprised. You know, since I've been here, I've continued to be amazed by the backing that our program receives from this community, Aggie Nation, if you will. And I know there are tough times out there for a lot of folks. People are going through a lot worse things than we are, having to relocate. And, you know, this pandemic has hit the pockets of a lot of people. And certainly we're not asking people that are in bad shape that way during these trying times to help us, but certainly those that can and are willing, you know, just so you know, we talk to our players about it. Certainly as a coaching staff and as the head coach, we are very humbled and grateful for the contributions that people are making and will probably continue to make to try to help us have a basketball season. You know, we would love to be able to bring some joy and have something for people that really love the Aggies do, you know, during this pandemic, especially, you know, during a shutdown like our state is going through right now. So we're very cognizant of what's going on. We're very thankful and grateful for those that have. And, you know, again, hopefully those that are willing and able, you will continue to do that. But it doesn't surprise me since I've been here. Like I said, this program is loved by many, and we certainly appreciate the efforts that people are making to make this happen for us.
Anything else for Coach this morning?
All right, guys, we're going to go coach some basketball, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for being here.
guys.